We are on the water today here on Loch Earn, and we are sea trialing the Bayliner 255. So we've got it launched. We're going to put it through its paces on the water. I'm going to walk you through the dash and all the controls as well, and just show you how this boat is performing underway. We'll just start by showing you where the battery isolator switches are. So whenever you come on board the boat, they are conveniently located in here. We've got a wee bit of spare engine oil. We'll also put a wee bit of spare gear oil in the boat as well. So you want to make sure that the battery isolator switch is pointing vertically up, so batteries 1 and 2, and you want to turn on the little, make sure the wee 12-volt DC main switch is turned on there as well, and that powers up your dashboard. There is a second battery isolator switch in the cabin for turning on the power to the bow thruster and the windlass. I'll show you that now in a wee second. So down in the cab, as you can see, we've got a new set of fenders going with the boat, and dock lines. All the camper covers are stored down in here as well, and all the bits and pieces, but we'll just pick our way through here. And in underneath this seat is where you'll find the isolator switch for the bow thruster and the anchor windlass, so we've got that turned on as well. So whenever you're coming on board the boat, just make sure you've got all 3 batteries turned on, so batteries 1 and 2 in the cockpit, and the third battery for the bow thruster in the cabin. And that means we've got all our equipment powered up and we are good to go. Just before we start the engine, I'll walk you through all the equipment on the dash. So we've got a windlass switch here, so down it up, so push the bottom of the switch to launch the anchor, and then push the top of the switch to recover it. We actually have it secured with a little safety, so just in case you inadvertently press the switch whenever the boat's underway, you don't want the anchor running out underneath the boat. So if you are going to launch the anchor, I should say, just open the windscreen, go up, undo the wee safety, and then you can hit the switch. There's also foot switches up on the deck. Just close this over, I'll walk up and show you the foot switches as well. So this is the wee safety here, just a wee simple rope to stop the thing inadvertently launching. So you got down and up. Okay, so that's your anchor windlass controls. The hatch lift is redundant on this boat, doesn't do anything. Courtesy lights brings on your little low level lights, little blue LEDs, hard to see them now in the daylight. Anchor light switch and navigation light switch turn on your nav lights, and your anchor pole light, which goes in the socket at the back. And the pole, as far as I know, is inside in the cabin. Bilge pumps, they've been rewired to work off the floats only, I think. Just need to double check that, but basically bilge pumps are now working off the floats. They were both replaced in the last couple of years. Then this is the switch for the searchlight. I think we looked at that in the yard, that was all working. So you flick it on to turn it on, then you get the joystick to control it. Yep, it's on. Oh, sorry, leave it on till we turn it back around. So that's your remote control searchlight. Stereo remote control is here. Again, I think this is something we looked at in the showroom video. 12-volt DC power. Over on the other side then, we've got a spare switch. We've got a windscreen wiper switch. New wiper blade on there. We've got our engine blower motor. We've got our trim tab controls, port and starboard. We'll be using those whenever we're out on the water here. And you got your horn switch. And then your bow thruster is on. So the boat is pretty responsive to the thruster. It really does give you good control over the bow. So that's your bow thruster working perfectly as well. Down here we've got a high water alarm for the build, so you can have that off, armed and test. That's all working. That's your switch for your macerator pump, so if you want to empty the contents of the holding tank at sea, push that down and that pumps out the tank. There's also a valve in the engine room that you have to open if you're operating that. I can show you that in a little minute. And then that's your power for your, just hold the power button in for your VHF radio, and that's starting up. We also have the instruments on the dash then, so we'll key on, ignition on to power up the instruments. So you got your digital depth sounder here, gives you the depth in feet onto the keel. We're in shallow water here at the minute, so it'll take a wee second to find itself. Rev counter here, fuel gauge, just over 1/4 of a tank of fuel in her. We've got our battery voltmeter. We've got our Garmin GPS map 750S, and I've got it set up on a combination screen. So we've got our chart plotter here. We've got our fish finder here with depth of water, picking up wee fish targets and stuff. And then we've got our info here, so it'll give us our speed when we're out on the water. So that'll give us a GPS speed reading from there. We've also got the boat speedo. We've got our oil pressure gauge, our temperature gauge, and our trim gauge as well for the angle of the drive trim. And all these instruments are all working perfectly. To start the engine, it's very simply just make sure that the throttle lever's in the neutral position. Make sure that your run switch is in the run position. We'll also put a safety lanyard on here so you can attach that to yourself whenever you're out on the water. But run switch in the run position, throttle lever in neutral, and just turn the key. And that's the engine running. Rev counter comes up, oil pressure comes up, and voltmeter increases a wee bit as well. So let's take a quick look around the engine bay. I will turn off the engine again for handiness, but we'll take a quick walk around the engine bay and then we'll get out on the lake and do our sea trial. Just make sure that the door is open and lift the hatch up. It doesn't open massively wide, but you still can get your head poked down in here to see what's what. So the boat's obviously floating here at the minute. There's no water or anything in the bilge. We'll fire up the engine now and show you, but everything looks good as well. Your gearbox, your gear oil level is here, just in the operating range. It is normal after service for that bottle to maybe empty once, just as the oil fills in maybe the odd wee air pocket in the drive. So we will include a wee bit of spare oil, so that if the bottle does empty on you, you can just top it back up again. Engine oil is on the dipstick, which is there, that yellow handle. Put engine oil in there. There's a bit of spare oil too if you need it. Power trim fluid levels back there. That's sorry for your trim tabs, and then this one here with the yellow, that is your Sterndrive trim. So all the fluid levels are all good. And the only other thing I was going to show you was the valve for the macerator. So is it? No, I think we've plumbed that in permanently actually. So there's discharge. That's the macerator pump down in there, that black cylinder. So it discharges from the bottom of the holding tank and goes straight out the side over there. So that is all open, and because the discharge is above the waterline, just above the waterline. So if you need to use the macerator, just flick that on and that'll empty the contents of the holding tank. There we go. Everything else in there looks good. So let's just fire the engine up again. I'll show you, and then we'll push off and get on the water. Final thing in the engine room is the bilge pump. So this is your bilge pump. That's how you test the float switch. So floats, lifts, and the bilge pump comes on. So that's how the bilge pump works. There is another one, same as that, up forward there. So now we're out of the marina, and just want to show you the gear shift. So pull the red trigger button up, forward gear, back to neutral, and reverse. Super smooth, really does, the controls feel great on this boat. The steering is nice and light as well. Obviously with low hours on it, 200 odd hours, you would expect it to be pretty nice, but yeah, that throttle shift on it is lovely. I have the trim tabs fully up, so I've pushed the bottom of the switches so they're fully retracted, so there's no trim tabs on here at all. And that what we'll do is we'll put the boat on plane with no tabs, so you can see how it planes without any trim tabs, and then we'll do it again with the trim tabs fully down, because that will keep the boat a lot flatter whenever it's going on plane. But just to walk you through the dash now, the engine's running. Got our depth gauge there, we've got our rev counter beside it, voltmeter showing 13 volts now. We've got a couple of revs on the engine, so the alternator's working well, it's charging properly. Fuel gauge, oil pressure, sort of in the middle of the gauge where you would expect it, and the temperature hand is in the middle of the gauge as well. This is our speedo, but we'll get our more accurate speed reading off this here, the GPS speed. We're doing 5.1 miles per hour at the minute, and our trim gauge, we'll trim the leg fully down for getting on plane as well, so that's us trimmed fully down. So we'll just tootle out past this island, and then we'll put the boat on plane. So we're going to put the boat on plane now, take it up to cruising speed, around about 3,000 or 3,200 RPM or thereabouts, and then we'll do a full speed run as well. So drive down, no trim tabs here, so this is how she gets on the plane without any tabs. So I'm just putting a wee bit of trim tab on to bring the nose down slightly. And that's us cruising now at about 3,400, just around about 3,500 RPM. We're doing 21.7 miles an hour, about 22 miles an hour. And this is going to be a nice economical cruising speed. Boat sitting nicely, good visibility through this forward through the screen. Temperatures and pressures all look good. And we've got the drive trimmed fully down as well. So we'll increase the speed a wee bit now. We'll take the trim tabs off. We'll pick up the speed a wee bit. So at 4,000 RPM we're doing 28 miles an hour. So this is what I would sort of consider your fast cruising speed. choppy out on the broad lock, so we're now in a more sheltered part of the lake, and I'll put her on plane again with the trim tabs fully down. So this should keep the bow a lot more level now for putting her on plane. Got the drive trim fully down as well, and we'll do a full speed run. We'll put her up on plane like this with the trim tabs fully extended, and then we will do a full speed run. I'll probably take the tabs off for that. So here we go. So you can see there's a lot less bow rise. So the boat doesn't really, the nose doesn't really rise at all doing that way. Just taking the tabs off now, and you get up on plane a lot quicker. So that's ideal if you've got a big load, heavy load on board, a lot of people on board. You can get up on plane quicker. Now let's trim the drive up a wee bit, do a full speed run. Let's do it 38, almost 38 miles an hour. Rev counter's reading slightly high there, but voltmeter's good, oil pressure and temperature are good. 38 miles an hour. So that's how the Bayliner 255 with the 5.0L MPI 260 horsepower Sterndrive runs on the water. It's matched up the Bravo 3 Sterndrive, so it jumps up on plane quickly even without any trim tabs. But if you put the trim tabs down, the boat really does respond to the trim tabs. So the two trim tabs down, it stays very flat, very level. Up on plane quickly. Cruising speeds are around about 22, economical cruising speeds about 22 miles an hour at 3,500 RPM or thereabouts. And I think that the rev counter's slightly overreading, so I think it's reading a wee bit higher than the revs actually are. But cruising speed around about 3 to 3,500 RPMs, 21, 22 miles an hour. Fast cruise then between 3,500 and 4,000 RPM, it's doing about 28 miles an hour. And then full speed, we were seeing 38 miles an hour on the GPS, which is great. So it's doing everything it's supposed to do. You can chuck it around like a big sports boat. There's plenty of power on tap for getting up on plane quickly, and it runs really smooth. All the controls, throttle and shift and steering's all nice and light. All the instruments are working perfectly, apart from that rev counter that might have a wee error on it, but everything else is working well, and the boat's running lovely. So I'll send this video to you, Martin, for you to check out in the next day or so, hopefully. and we'll be in touch about organising the delivery for next week, all being well. Speak soon. Thanks now. Bye bye.